Welcome to the Blue Cafe. Today we offer you a classic r/best of story. The tale of a young man looking for the truth. Please like and subscribe. Cheers. Now, on to today's story. I, 22M, suspect something between my girlfriend, 22F, and my friend, 21M. We all live together. Am I imagining things? Infidelity. I'm really freaking out right now because if what I suspect is true, this living situation is about to get really complicated. Please tell me I'm just crazy. Sorry if this is long. Background. We are two couples living together, we all attend the same university. The apartment was originally leased by my girlfriend of about 2 years, Alexis, 22F, and our mutual friend Brooke, 22F. The apartment is huge and expensive. There was originally supposed to be 3 girls living there, but the last one backed out abruptly. They were planning on moving somewhere cheaper, but they had put a lot of work into the apartment and loved it so much they hated the idea of leaving. I offered to move in when my lease was up in May so we could split the rent and utilities 3 ways. I was sleeping over often anyways. Both girls were absolutely ecstatic about the idea. Shortly before I moved in, Brooke started dating my best friend Derek. This was cool because now both couples got to hang out with their best friends and so's all at once. It seemed perfect. Derek began sleeping over a lot, and when his parents sold their house and left in October, he temporarily moved in. We haven't really pushed for him to find a new place because splitting everything 4 ways is helping all of us so much. But again, only Alexis and Brooke are on the lease. The apartment owner surprisingly does not mind as long as rent gets paid, because we are always quiet. There are 3 incidents that made me think something was up. If it weren't for these combined incidents, I would never make an accusation like this because Alexis is such a sweet and shy girl and Derek has been a brother to me. They don't seem flirty, but as I mentioned before, all 4 of us are very close friends, so we spend a lot of time together. Incident 1. MWF Brooke and I have early classes, so we're gone by 8 AM. Derek and Alexis start in the afternoon, so it's not unusual for them to leave together, though they usually take separate cars. One of these days, I decided to wait for Alexis outside of her class so I could surprise her with lunch. I watched everyone shuffle out of the class, but Alexis wasn't with them. I texted her asking where she was and she replied, "Just got out of class, gonna go home to study." I called her to see if I had just barely missed her or something, and there was no response, which I considered weird because she had just texted me a second ago. She didn't answer until much later, which is also unusual for her. She's one of those girls that's often on her phone. I ran into Brooke later in the day and she mentioned in passing that Derek had stayed home sick, she was going to bring him soup, blah blah. At the time, I didn't think much of it. When I got home later that night, I noticed Alexis' car was in the exact same spot. She usually parks in guest parking because our unit only has 3 spaces, as a result her car moves a lot. I asked her if she'd gone to class and she got quiet before sheepishly admitting to skipping because she felt the professor sucked at explaining things, but she knows I hate when she skips classes, something that's gotten her grades in trouble before, but she recently started doing better. I kissed her and said I trusted her judgment. While I was doing the dishes, she explained how she probably won't skip again because being bored alone in the house was the worst. I laughed and we went about our business. At night we went to bed, and as I lay there drifting off, it hit me. She shouldn't have been alone because Derek was homesick, right? She was still up on her phone, so I popped awake and asked her where Derek was today since Brooke had said he was homesick. She seemed startled by the question, but that may have been from me being half asleep to suddenly wide awake with a random question. She said he was here a bit in the morning but went to do errands or something, she wasn't sure. After the other incidents, I realized that the scattered way she answered this question seemed off, but that may just be my imagination. Incident 2. I went to throw some stuff out in the kitchen garbage when I noticed a condom wrapper that was the exact same brand Alexis and I use. It wasn't super visible, sort of tucked behind a cereal box, but the distinctive color caught my eye. Brooke and Derek always use a different brand, free from the University Health Center, while ours are expensive Trojans. It was weird because we usually keep the wrappers in our respective rooms' garbage cans so they never appear in the kitchen. Furthermore, because of exams and general stress, Alexis and I hadn't slept together in a few days. I didn't really dig around for a used condom or anything, I just went back to the room to check if any of ours were missing. I really couldn't tell, because we buy in bulk. My first thought was that Brooke and Derek had ran out and broke into our stash, and I was upset that they hadn't even asked. Later that night I mentioned the condom wrapper to Alexis and her eyes got wide. When I mentioned my theory, she got unusually distressed. She's always very calm, and went on a rant about them violating our privacy. I suggested we talk to them about it, and she immediately shut the idea down and made me swear not to bring it up unless they did it again. She didn't want to have this awkward conversation, which was weird to me because we're all generally pretty open about sex given that we live together. Though it is possible that Alexis was being genuine because she's from a conservative small town and she doesn't talk about these things as much as we do. Incident 3. Me and Derek are cool with the dudes in the apartment next to us, who are graduates from our university. We don't hang out or anything, but we have the kind of relationship where we make small talk about sports or whatever in the hall and are comfortable asking the other to keep it down without it being awkward. Last Monday, during our break, I was locking up when no one else was at the apartment, when I ran into one of the guys from next door. We talked football for a bit, and then he mentioned that one of the couples in the apartment is really a fan of morning sex and that the walls were way too thin. I laughed because Alexis and I usually had sex weekend mornings when we had the house to ourselves. Brooke and Derek usually spend weekends at her parents' house about an hour and a half away. The more I thought about it later in the day, the more I realized we hadn't been having morning sex in about a month. On the weekends it had been more towards the evening or not at all. Did he mean on weekdays? My heart sort of dropped. I kind of want to ask him to elaborate, but the conversation ended and I feel like I missed my chance. Plus it's a weird thing to ask and I feel like I must be being paranoid. So there you have it, r/relationships. Am I crazy? Am I looking for signs that aren't there, or is something up? And if so, how do I proceed? I don't want to ask her just yet because 1, I don't want to come off as crazy and jealous if nothing is up. 2, if something is up, I don't want them to start hiding it better. I was thinking of dropping by one of those mornings when they're alone together, but I don't know how to time it right. If I drop by too early or late, they might get more cautious. TLDR, several ambiguous incidents have led me to suspect my girlfriend and best friend may be sleeping together, but I don't know if I'm imagining things. Update: I, 22M, suspect something between my girlfriend, 22F, and my friend, 21M. We all live together. Am I imagining things? Locked post: a lot of you requested an update to my original post. The majority of you suggested that I speak to Brooke and or attempt to walk in on the act. I decided on doing both. Sunday night everyone was back in the apartment. I had every intention of speaking to Brooke about the neighbor's comment alone, but before I could, she said something that completely threw my theory off. She told Derek to get to bed so he wouldn't be tired for work in the morning. What? I knew Derek had a job on campus, but he had always worked the same night shifts. Being as casual as possible, I inquired how long he'd been working mornings and when he started. He said he picked up the extra shifts a month ago and worked at 9. I leave at 7:45, so it's possible for me not to have noticed that. I spent the rest of the night trying to figure out whether he was lying about that, whether still he had some mornings here at home, whether Alexis could be seeing someone other than Derek in the mornings, like some of you suggested, or, again, if I was just a paranoid loser. I went to bed feeling emotionally drained and confused. The next morning I left for classes as usual and operated on autopilot. I alternated between thinking I'd run home to check on Alexis and thinking I had way too much work to run around based on a theory that I wasn't even sure about anymore. In the end, I walked out of my first class and straight to my car to go home. In a weird way, I sort of wish I hadn't. When I got to the apartment, Derek's car wasn't there, just Alexis. I walked to the apartment with my heart pounding all sorts of crazy. I don't know what I was expecting. Outside the apartment door I could immediately hear a guy's voice inside. I heard him talking and laughing and a soft feminine mumble replying and giggling back. I've been on this subreddit long enough to see all the different reactions people have to this situation. I never once contemplated what I'd do. I pressed my ear to the door and saw if I could make out what they were saying, but I could only make out a word here and there. There was a lot of giggling. Then, I heard the sound of Alexis being tickled and shrieking. Maybe I should have waited more. In retrospect I wish I did, but I couldn't take it. As soon as I started fiddling with my keys, it was dead silence in there. She was ducking Mark. I never mentioned Mark in the previous post, but he's one of the guys in the apartment next to us, not the one that tipped me off. He's the only one I never liked. Ducking know-it-all douchebag attitude. Always made inappropriate comments towards both girls. Never thought anything of it. As soon as I opened the door, they both gave me a deer-in-headlights look that removed any naive doubt I may have retained that the situation was innocent. I was not planning on yelling at them or demanding answers, but, and this is ducking embarrassing, my eyes began to well with tears. I didn't want them to see that shit. So I said nice. Real ducking is nice. And bolted back to my car. I heard Alexis yelling my name in the hallway and picked up the pace. I sort of expected her to be chasing me, but by the time I got to the car there was no one following me. I drove to a park that's near the apartment and sat there in disbelief. My first thought, weirdly enough, was how is my family going to take this? What the hell am I going to tell them? My family ducking loved Alexis. They joked about our wedding and regularly called her part of the family. Then I started thinking about living arrangements. Our finals end in about 2 weeks, there's no way I can handle moving now. I'm applying to an extremely competitive graduate program and I can't let anything get in the way of that. Definitely not this cheating bitch. I'm writing this from a friend's house. I explained the situation, he explained it to his parents and they welcomed me to stay in their home. I'm going to have to go back home to get some clothes sometime. I'm planning on going during this lab period. I know Alexis can't skip tomorrow. It took her an hour or so to start blowing up my phone, but once she did it didn't stop. She started off asking me to come home so she could explain. Before I even had a chance to respond she sent another one begging me to come back because she was having an anxiety attack, something I always helped her through. Maybe I'm heartless, but all I could think was good, you earned it. There was a pause and then she sent I don't know why you get so jealous, we were just hanging out. I waited. She sent look, I know it looks super sketchy, believe me if I were you I'd think the same thing, but we didn't do anything. He needed advice on his girl problems. You have to believe me. No, I don't. Normally I would have gotten a weird sense of satisfaction watching a cheater scramble to cover their ass, but my stupid brain just kept replaying all these great times we had together and wondering if she was cheating then too. I want to know when this started, but at the same time I'm worried it's been going on for longer than the month I've suspected something. I received a text later that night from a number I didn't recognize. It was the nice dude from next door. He said, paraphrasing because it was a long text, that he got my number from Derek. He was extremely sorry for what I was going through and that he would have told me sooner but he wasn't completely sure. He said he knew his friend was seeing a girl with a boyfriend, but didn't put it together until he learned the girl's name. As many of you suspected, the comment was him trying to tip me off. So yeah, I guess he's bro of the year. I don't think Derek and Brooke know yet. I haven't texted them. I haven't found the words. I know it's going to turn our living arrangement and friendships upside down. I guess I should message them before Alexis paints a different picture. I wonder what the cool neighbor said when he asked for my number. I don't think he told them, they would have said something. Right? Unless they took her side. Then I've lost my girlfriend and friends. Any advice on coping with something like this, especially from those who have been there before, please let me know. I don't have many friends to reach out to besides the guy I'm staying with. Alexis, Brooke and Derek were basically my family. Alexis and I had talked about spending our lives together. I have never been serious about a girl the way I was with her. Edit, I am seriously moved by the amount of support you guys are giving me here. Please keep them coming. I may not reply to all the comments, but I've read each one on both posts. I'm going to tell Derek and Brooke soon. I'll try to do a follow-up when I have some sort of plan. TLDR, she was cheating, but it wasn't with Derek. I'm shattered. Update 2, I, 22M, suspect something between my girlfriend, 22F, and my friend, 21M. We all live together. Am I imagining things? Infidelity. Original. Update 1. You wonderful mother duckers. Between the comments to both posts and my inbox I have an immense collection of personalized pep talks, which I am referring to whenever I feel down, admittedly, a lot these days. I got advice/stories from all sorts of people, married, single, old, young. Wow. I never thought the internet would bring me this level of support. I just want you guys to know that by just typing up some comments you have made a very real difference in someone's life. Gotta say it feels a little strange receiving 6 Reddit gold and making it to r/best of just for sharing the worst day of my life, haha. I got a lot of messages urging me to join Red Pill. This experience has soured my view of Alexis. Not women in general. I got some messages saying I write too well and this is obviously made up. I have 2 words for you, I wish. A clarification on the last update, I wasn't clear about what I see when I walked in. They weren't literally ducking, they were just sitting on the couch with a deer in headlights look that was incredibly incriminating and they both went quiet. It was just obviously not a hey, guess who dropped by situation. Anyways, onto the update. I've been extremely busy with the semester ending and I took the majority's advice to bury my head in work. I've spent a lot of time at the library because Alexis never goes there. In the process of posting the last update I realized how dumb it was that I hadn't contacted Derek and Brooke with my side. I screenshotted the text from the cool neighbor, Will. Side note, all names have been changed except Mark because duck you Mark. Within the minute, Derek was blowing up my phone with calls and texts that made it very apparent he didn't know anything. At the same time Alexis was sending texts begging me to meet up with her. I was feeling miserable and sent back a single text to Derek saying I wasn't feeling up to talking, then put my phone away for the night. In the morning I got a text saying to meet him at my favorite restaurant for dinner and drinks on him, assuring me that no one would be there, not even Brooke. I haven't had any appetite since everything went down, but the offer meant a lot and I really did want to see him, so I decided to go after classes. I got to the restaurant first and I had my heart in my throat worrying that Alexis would somehow be there, but she wasn't. Derek came up to me and gave me a big hug and opened with "Dude, what the duck?" So here's where shit gets a bit crazy and dramatic. A lot of you suggested that Brooke might side with Alexis or had been covering up for her the whole time. I wasn't so sure, because while she is closer to Alexis, her and I have been friends for a bit longer. According to Derek, as soon as he told Brooke she was absolutely furious. In his words, I sort of wanted to bitch Alexis out but Brooke took care of that. And then some. Remember how I said Alexis came from a conservative small town? Her parents had no idea that we were living together and she constantly stressed that they couldn't know or they'd cut her off financially. They liked me enough to be polite, but they were constantly worried a relationship would distract her from school and didn't want her getting pregnant or whatever. Derek said that Brooke demanded Alexis pack her things and find a new place or she'd call up her parents and tell them everything. Derek told me that later that night Alexis was sitting in the living room hugging a sweater I'd left behind and wailing at the top of her lungs that her life was over when Brooke yelled from her bedroom, "Well, maybe you shouldn't have ducked Mark then." Imagining that moment was kind of funny. Brooke's always been a very no-nonsense girl with a hot temper, but I definitely didn't expect this. It was extremely touching that she took the cheating that seriously. During that dinner all my fears that I'd lost my friends were completely washed away and I was able to choke down a few pieces of sushi. When we left dinner, Derek promised to let me know when Alexis was gone so I could move back in. I declined his offer, because 1, even if she does move out, everything in that apartment reminds me of her, including Derek and Brooke. 2, Alexis and Mark probably ducked in my room, so I really don't want to sleep in it. 3, in the current emotional state I'm in I don't want to be third-wheeling a happy couple, even though I'm sure they'd be considerate. He understood my points but said to let him know if I changed my mind, because Brooke and Alexis' friendship seems to be pretty over. This week has been pretty uneventful, but I keep having to dodge Alexis. Luckily, I'm in an undergraduate program that only has 60 students, so we have a lot of our classes together. I asked 2 friends to keep an eye out for her after giving them spark notes of the story, and started showing up to class at the last minute. As far as I know, she only waited outside of one of my classes. I got a text saying "bitch has been spotted in front of classroom. Waterworks in progress. Proceed with caution." I ended up skipping the class, because I didn't know if she was going to leave and I really didn't want to risk it. Later that night she sent me a really long Facebook message explaining everything from the beginning and it sort of made me sick to read. I contemplated not reading it but once I opened it I just had to. She said that he'd been flirty with her in the halls. As I mentioned before, he would say inappropriate shit to both girls, and she tried to be friendly back, but it must have come off as flirting because he kissed her mid-sentence one day. She said she felt guilty that she led him on and that guilt prevented her from shooting him down in future advances because she felt like it was her fault it happened and she has trouble saying no. She said they'd only slept together 3 times and she hated it. He had pushed her into it, not rape, but I never said yes either, and she was going to end it during the conversation I walked in on. She said she understood if I needed some time and some space but that she'd do absolutely anything to make it right and would spend the rest of her life making it up to me by treating me like a king. I'd never have to cook, clean or do my laundry again. Give me full access to her phone and passwords. She even suggested we install Life 360, an app that allows you to track someone's location through their phone, so I would know where she is at all times. Cut off all contact with Mark and all her male friends, just for good measure, I guess. Make up sex whenever I wanted. Yeah, that sounds like a healthy relationship, right? I didn't answer. I kind of wanted to keep her on Facebook and watch the shit show unfold. She was posting dramatic statuses and song lyrics about mistakes, forgiveness and some from our song. But I know how I am, I don't want to compulsively check her page or go through old photos. So I blocked her. Derek sent me a text a few hours later saying she's crying and screaming about you blocking her, LOL. In happier news, the family I'm staying with is fantastic. I felt a little guilty about taking up their space, electricity, etc. so I offered to put down rent and pay for some bills. I am unemployed but my family gives me a decent allowance for rent and food, but they declined. The dad said first month's free. If you need more time here then we'll talk about it. And winked. My friend was telling me that they have hosted his and his sister's troubled friends so it wasn't a big deal. Still, I'm unbelievably grateful. As for Will, awesome neighbor, I called him to thank him for everything. I wasn't up to inviting him for dinner just yet, but I will. He apologized profusely. He says he can't stand Mark, not just for what he did with Alexis but various other things that I won't go into. He told me that Mark has been unusually quiet the past few days and told another one of the guys that he had gotten dumped. Whatever. I don't want to think about it. So that's really all I have for you guys. I'm still going to be friends with Derek and Brooke, but I'm going to limit my contact with them because they remind me of Alexis so much. I sent Brooke a message thanking her for kicking Alexis out, and she said she'd do it regardless of whether or not I move back in. She's going to give me a heads up on when Alexis is gone so I can get the rest of my things. In the meantime, I'm spending a lot of time studying, applying to grad schools, and hanging out with the guy I'm living with. Earlier this week I posted onto my university's Facebook group searching for roommates for next semester, and I already have a few replies. I'm going to wait until after finals to tell my parents about the situation because my mom asks a million questions about everything and I'm not in the mood to answer them. Again, thank you for all the messages. I did not expect this level of attention, and while it has made me a bit paranoid, someone will recognize the story from the details. Duck it, I needed the support. I ducking love you guys. TLDR, Brooke is kicking Alexis out and Derek is still my buddy. I'm doing okay given the circumstances, and I'll hopefully be finding a new apartment next month. Update 3, I, 22M, suspect something between my girlfriend, 22F, and my friend, 21M. We all live together. Am I imagining things? Infidelity. Original. Update 1. Update 2. Well, I really wasn't planning on updating, but a lot of you have prodded for one and I do owe you guys after all the wonderful support I received. Once finals ended, I did well given the circumstances. Everything hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, almost worse than the initial insult. I removed all my social media pictures with her, threw out stuff that reminded me of her, took our songs off my playlists, yada yada. We've been inseparable since we met, so this was over 2 years of accumulated memories. Long story short, it was very hard, but I had an urge to get it all done before the new year. That whole cliche new year, new me thing. I guess. I don't know. Anyways, one particular redditor sent me a message about how Alexis might be driven to suicide now that she's lost everything, her closest friends, her boyfriend and her apartment. I know that seems like an overdramatic prediction, but I couldn't get it out of my mind after reading it. What Alexis did was absolutely freaking terrible, but I felt like a final conversation might give me better closure and maybe help her understand that it's completely over and get her to move on. So I planned to meet with her before everyone went home for break. A lot of you were big on icing her out, so I'm genuinely sorry to disappoint, but I had to do this for me. I sent Alexis, if you want to talk, we can meet up somewhere. But there's no way we can be together after what happened, so please don't ask, okay? She responded almost immediately asking when and where. We arranged to meet at an off-campus coffee place. When I got there she was already at a table and got up to hug me. I waved her away and she jerked back like a puppy that had been kicked. I felt shitty immediately, but I wanted to get it over with. We made some stupid small talk. She asked how I'd been, how were finals, etc., but I sort of interrupted it. I asked her if she had been unhappy with our relationship. Her eyes got real wide and she said no a bunch of times and got quiet. So I asked her why if she wasn't unhappy. Basically she retold the story about having trouble saying no and him being so pushy. I stopped her and asked her to cut the BS and just take responsibility. That maybe it excused her actions up until he kissed her mid-sentence, but sex 3 times? Yeah. No. She looked down, shrugged and muttered, "You're right, I know." At this point she started tearing up and said she was so sorry, that I'd never understand how sorry she was. Then she asked if there was any chance we could be together again, which I was kind of expecting even though I told her not to. I just shook my head. I told her she could still live with Derek and Brooke if she wanted to, but she declined and told me she already had plans to move in with another girlfriend of hers. From here on out the conversation went in circles, with her trying to explain away her actions with her difficulty turning down guys due to her fear of being seen as a frigid bitch, and me trying to get her to admit that excuse was garbage. I don't know why. I just really needed her to stop using that crutch and admit she had ruined a perfectly good relationship with a very real future all on her own. But she just wouldn't. She was always stubborn. Finally, I let it go and we parted ways somewhat amicably. As I was leaving, she grabbed my hand and parted her lips to say something but ended up shaking her head and letting go. The conversation made me feel worse than I had before at first, but ultimately it really made me see that she was never the kind of person I wanted to be with, even without the cheating. She never took responsibility for anything. Failed classes were because the professor was incompetent, not finding a job/internship was bad luck and not her lack of effort, etc. I just never really thought about it too hard. I think I was still in the honeymoon stage or something equals I'm an idiot sometimes. So at this point I leave the coffee place and ask Derek to hang out. I ended up going to the apartment, and although Brooke was there, she mostly stayed in her room. We drank some beers and played some video games. It really cheered me up. We also talked a bit about everything that happened. He admitted that they hadn't been able to find a third roommate. Aside from complete strangers, they'd rather not move in, and asked me again to stay with them. I could tell he really wanted me to, and I felt guilty about them being stuck with the lease, so I accepted. I told them I needed to wait until Alexis took all her things though. The furniture is hers from before I even moved in, and I still don't want to sleep in that bed. Also, Brooke apologized for getting so involved in the situation and yelling at Alexis. Apparently her stepdad had cheated on her mom and it's a sore subject for her. I told her I genuinely didn't mind and she was welcome to do it again if the mood struck her. I also bought Will some food and drinks at a great place near campus. A lot of you wanted to know the other shit Mark had done that had Will so pissed off. Apparently he had to be harassed to pay rent, claimed he couldn't contribute to any of the household expenses, like dish soap, light bulbs, cleaning supplies, and regularly came in yelling and laughing at odd hours and agreeing to keep it down, then carrying on at the same volume. The standard douchebag roommate crap, really. Will is a really cool guy. We talked a lot about the situation with Alexis but also about school and sports. It was actually pretty fun. I eventually did tell my folks about the situation and, as expected, my mom bombarded me with 1,000 questions and cried a lot. So that was fun. Going home made me feel a little better, but my older brother got engaged on Christmas Eve, and given the recent circumstances I wasn't as excited for him as I should have been, which made me feel like a shitty sibling. Plus it's all my family can talk about now and I'm just not in the mood. Life isn't perfect now, but I'm doing better. Alexis moved her shit out and I bought a second-hand bed and dresser off another student. I had my first round of classes last week, and although I'm going to sound like a total nerd, the courses are really cool, hands-on, and the professors are incredibly cool people. Derek and Brooke have been really supportive and don't make me feel like a third wheel at all. I saw Mark in the hallway once and he totally ignored me and I ignored him, but the urge to punch him in the face was very real. I guess that's something that will go away over time. I almost wanted to call him out on the whole thing, but with the kind of person Will had described, the conversation would have gotten me nowhere and probably pissed me off more. Sorry this update isn't as exciting as the previous ones. Thank you for your love and support, Reddit. It really helped me through such a bad time. TLDR, Alexis made more excuses and then moved out. I moved back in. My friends are great and I'm on the path to recovering from the whole ordeal. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Please comment, like and subscribe. Cheers. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are.